Merry Christmas Eve, folks, and welcome back to WWE Network and Chill, where I, Graham Jason Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network. In case you haven't already checked it out, please watch my review on the WWE 365 episode on Seth Rollins. I put that up yesterday during Raw, watched it really late, reviewed it late, put it up late, but went up Monday nonetheless, and made it a point to watch this episode of Table for Three today, and broke it down here today, despite the fact it's Christmas Eve. I watch shit, I review shit, I do work on shit on Christmas Eve, Christmas, New Year's, Valentine's Day, 4th of July. I take no days off. But this was well worth it, though. I will tell you right now here, first and foremost, this episode of Table for Three was well worth it. Clocks in at around 26, 27 minutes. Called Dinner of Domination, featuring D'Lo Brown, The Godfather, and Mark Henry, of course, all members of the Nation of Domination. And I mentioned, I think either yesterday here on Network and Chill or elsewhere, when I first saw the ads for a new Network and Chill, or for a new Table for Three featuring the members of Nation of Domination, I'm like, I feel like I've seen this before. For some reason, I thought it was a rerun, and it wasn't. It was a brand new episode. But I looked back, I think on the network, if you go back to Season 3 of Table for Three, I think the episode aired in like 2017. They already did one on Nation of Domination, although instead of being D'Lo, Godfather, and Mark Henry, it was Mark Henry, Godfather, and Ron Simmons. D'Lo, I think he's currently with Impact at the moment, and I don't know if he was back with Impact at this point. This was recorded over WrestleMania weekend, so I'm not 100% sure if this was recorded before he went back to Impact, or while he was still there, or, before, after. I'm not really sure. I remember meeting him that weekend at a WrestleCon event. He actually signed my replica Intercontinental Championship belt. That might have been before he went back to TNA. I don't really remember, but either way, this was a great episode, though. They kick off the episode talking about how they haven't really sat down and talked with each other in a while. It's been a while. They keep in touch. All the members of Nation of Domination keep in touch when they're not busy. But it's been a while since they've really sat down and talked, probably including D'Lo, because Godfather and Mark Henry did it 2 years ago on this very same show. Mark Henry recalls meeting the Godfather. He was walking with Vince into Vince's office when Mark first arrived in WWE. And the Godfather was sitting outside Vince's office with The Undertaker. And Undertaker said to Henry, "Hey, look at this big old baby face." And Henry got offended because he didn't know what he meant by that, because he wasn't really, privy to the wrestling lingo at that point. So when Mark Henry said, "Hey, I don't have a baby face," or whatever he said in response, Taker just rolled his eyes and goes, "Oh," like he doesn't get it. I thought that was funny. D'Lo Brown talked about Mark Henry also talks about how he met D'Lo Brown and how all the green guys worked with D'Lo. He was one of the more reliable workers in the company at that point, and Mark Henry was put with D'Lo Brown. He shares a story of when they first started working together, when Mark Henry first came into the company, and maybe around the Nation of Domination days, if not before that. D'Lo was working with Mark Henry, and Mark was kind of putting on a chokehold a little too aggressively, to the point where he was almost choking D'Lo, which is kind of funny. And D'Lo's like, "Listen, dude, just relax, take it easy. You don't have to be so intense 100% of the time." Henry talked about how he trained for a month in Memphis before he made his WWE debut. I don't think he had any matches in that time. He may not have had wrestled a single match before he wrestled for the first time in WWE, which is a lot like Braun Strowman. Braun Strowman wrestled maybe 4 or 5 matches for NXT. I mean, it's a little different, but kind of similar in a way, which is funny I say that because I think Braun Strowman credits Mark Henry for bringing him into the company, kind of scouting him, a lot like Bianca Belair. But I think Strowman was another guy who only worked a handful of matches, not even before he signed with WWE, but while he was in the developmental system, which is what that shit is for. You're in NXT to get better and work matches, but he was largely used as a rosebud and doing other shit in 2014, early 2015. And then he debuted on Raw, and he wasn't good at the beginning, but he got real good real quick starting around 2016. But that's about Braun Strowman. We're talking the Nation of Domination here today. D'Lo talked about how he started in Smoky Mountain Wrestling with Jim Cornette before going over to Puerto Rico. He recalls a phone call that he had with Jim Cornette, and he hadn't heard from Jim for about 6 months. So we gave him a call just to kind of check in around, right after the Christmas break wrapped up. And Jim was like, "Where the hell have you been? Why haven't you, where the hell have you been? Why haven't you called me? Why haven't you talked to me?" D'Lo was like, "I didn't know that you were waiting for me to call you. I was waiting for you to call me," that type of thing, And Cornette's like, well, listen, the WWE wants you, like, they would love to use you, whatever, so they're going to fly you out in a couple days. D'Lo recalls going out to Goodwill to get his very first suit. He needed a suit for that, whatever his debut was, which was a part of the Nation of Domination. I didn't know he debuted as part of the Nation, but I guess he did. So he went out and bought a suit from Goodwill before making his debut in WWE, like, the very next week or a couple days after that or whatever it was, which is pretty funny. A black suit is what he had to get for the segment on Raw that night. So, even Mark Henry brought up how the people of today that are coming up in the business currently will never know how it used to be. That you were on your own back then. Like today, the company will get stuff for you. Like, I mean, I'm sure a suit people will still have to go out and get them themselves. But I mean, I don't work there, so I don't know. But Henry brings up how, like, if the company needs something of you, they'll usually do it for you and won't force you to do it on your own. But stuff like that is very important to do back on your own back then. And even today, stuff like that, to go out and get your first suit and prepare for your big national debut on WWE TV. That's a big thing. And something that Henry argues is kind of lost on today's wrestling business. They also bring up, which I never knew, and they had Ron Simmons here on the show a few different times with, the APA and Teddy Long and the other Nation of Domination episode a couple years ago. But in neither time did they say that the Know Your Role line that The Rock became famous for was originally from Ron Simmons himself. He came up with that during a segment on TV, and The Rock kind of took it and made it his own. And the word SmackDown, although The Rock is credited with coming up with that too, comes from Dr. Dre. The Rock was listening, I guess, to Dr. Dre during a car ride on the way to a show. In one of his lyrics, he said something about SmackDown, and he used that in a promo, and it took off. And look, because of Dr. Dre, we now have our own show called SmackDown, Friday Night SmackDown. So, not The Rock, but Dr. Dre is to be credited for that. I mean, The Rock, too, obviously took it to an all-new level. But I guess Dr. Dre was the original, inspiration behind that line. D'Lo also talked about how his signature head shake that he became known for during the Nation of Domination and beyond was actually from Chris Tucker in Friday. Chris Tucker used to do a thing where he'd like shake his head vigorously like D'Lo Brown used to do. And D'Lo, obviously Chris Tucker did it first, but D'Lo took that, used it on TV one time, and D'Lo tells this great story about how he did it on TV for the first time, and in the same, seconds, in the same few seconds that he did the head shake, he cussed too on TV, and he was like, fuck, I could be fined, I could be fired, blah, blah, blah. So he goes backstage, and everyone who has ever worked there knows that Vince has two different reactions. One is the nod of approval. The other one is he points his glasses down, kind of takes his glasses down from his face, and gives you the finger. Not the middle finger, the index finger, kind of, addressing you to come on over to him, which is what D'Lo got. So D'Lo's like, fuck, I'm getting fined, like he knew that I cussed. So D'Lo walks over to Vince, and Vince says, you know that head shake thing that you did? Keep doing it, which is really funny. I thought that was a great story. They talk about how the people's elbow that The Rock used to do was originally called the 1-2-3 hitch, and that it actually came from The Rock not being able to drop an elbow with his left elbow, so he did it with his right elbow instead. Isn't that funny? I guess that's how he ended up doing the people's elbow. He did it by accident because he couldn't drop a left elbow, so he started using the right instead, which is pretty funny. So anyway, the Nation needed someone to bump for them because I guess they had Clarence something in the early days of the group. I'm not overly familiar with the Nation of Domination, but they did mention it here. Something about the Clarence maternity or something like that. They brought in a bunch of guys who just couldn't bump. Not wrestlers, but just random people to be a part of the group. None of them could bump. So that's why they brought in D'Lo Brown, because he could bump wonderfully. He was their bump guy for the longest time. The Rock, or rather, I think it was Henry who had said that it was The Rock who brought him into the Nation of Domination as a gift to Ron Simmons on TV. And it took Henry, he said, it took him 2 months to finally talk to Ron Simmons because Ron Simmons, I guess, was pissed either when he first met him or for whatever reason. So they didn't talk for the first 2 months he was part of the group until Ron Simmons finally broke the ice and said, hey, you ever going to talk to me? Like, what's going on with that? And they've been friends ever since, which is kind of funny. But then soon after that, Godfather actually shares a story about how he didn't know until the day of that he joined the Nation of Domination that he was going to be a part of the group. So this has been, rumored for years now and for a long time that Godfather, so before he came back to the company, he was Papa Shango years earlier. I think maybe back in the 80s when Ultimate Warrior was there and stuff like that. So this is about a decade later. And I'm not sure if I've ever heard Godfather himself talk about this. I'm sure he has in some sort of shoot interview, not to my recollection, not that I've ever seen. But But with Godfather, though, he came back to the company, and he was going to be Papa Shango again. And they had all the plans drawn up for him to be Papa Shango. He had the makeup, he had the look, he had everything going for him. He was ready to debut as Papa Shango back on WWE TV until the day of. Vince pulled him aside and said, listen, dude, plans have changed. We're bringing you into the Nation of Domination instead. So no more Papa Shango. And I'm sure he was kind of disappointed about that because he liked the character. They had the look made, the outfit made. They had everything ready for Papa Shango to be back on TV. Probably around 97, 98. Until Vince said, listen, we're going to put you in the Nation instead. Which ended up working wonderfully. I mean, the Papa Shango thing may not have worked as well in the Attitude Era as it did in the 80s. It would have been cool, I think. But I'm not sure if many people would have been as, familiar with it or as reacted to it the same way they did 10 years prior. So in the end, it ended up working out wonderfully because as a result of being brought into the Nation of Domination, he became the Godfather soon after. So it probably just worked out for the best as it, likely should have. And it was that very same night on Raw when he debuted as a member of the Nation of Domination that he was put in a handicap match with Ron Simmons, and he beat The Undertaker. He was told that very night that he'd be beating The Undertaker in a handicap match alongside Ron Simmons, and he was going to be the one to pin Taker. Like, that's a big re-debut right there, to be brought back and then to pin Taker, The Undertaker of all people, that very same night. That's a pretty big deal. So I'm sure it ended up working out just fine for him. He said that he actually met Ron Simmons for the first time that day, which is interesting. And he said, or rather Henry brought up, and they all kind of agreed that the Nation of Domination really allowed everyone involved to learn for a variety of different things. And that it was never meant to be a black separatist group. Mark Henry brings up, it was all about like the rising up, and it had nothing to do, obviously a lot of the members were African American, but that wasn't the sole purpose of the group because Owen Hart ended up joining. They said they had Crush join, Savio Vega, who was Puerto Rican, I believe. So, maybe he was half black. I'm not sure. But they ended up bringing in people that weren't black is what I'm saying. So it wasn't the fact that, oh, look, we're black, we're being held down. It was about being held down, but it wasn't about being a black separatist group, and there wasn't a lot of racial overtones as part of the stable. And it ended up working out well just the way that it was. A lot like the New Day, honestly. They didn't come together, because we're all black and we're being held down. Yeah, they all happen to be African American, but that wasn't the sole purpose of the New Day when it first started. Obviously, they became preachers and shit like that in late 2014, but the original idea behind the group, a lot like Nation of Domination, which is funny hearing Xavier talk about it now in like his podcast with the New Day. He literally said a few weeks ago, yeah, we were trying to be the Nation of Domination, not the fact that we were black, but the fact that we were all being held down and felt that we deserved more. Yet I remember a very vivid time 5 years ago that they were outright saying on social media and in interviews and shit like that, listen, we're not the Nation of Domination. We're not trying to be like the Nation. We aren't the Nation. Don't call us the Nation. But that's exactly what they were going for, so why bother fighting it? You know what I'm saying? Maybe it's because they were trying to be heels back then before they ended up going back to being baby faces in late 2014. I don't know. But I thought that was just weird, thinking back on that now. But nonetheless, they also talk about, again, Owen Hart being added into the group. They can't really remember what the thought process was behind him being added into the stable. But they share a funny story about Owen Hart being called Mr. White Folks because his sole purpose as being part of the group was to get white people angry. That's what fucking one of these guys said. I forgot who said it. I think it might have been, D'Lo Brown, which is hilarious. But they called him Mr. White Folks as a nickname, not on TV, but like behind the scenes, because he was a part of the group to get white people angry, which is so funny. They share a lot of stories about Owen after that, about Owen telling D'Lo during a match that his boots were untied and that the referee's boots were untied, just to kind of get him relaxed. And D'Lo credits him with getting him relaxed during matches and not being so uptight and stressed out and stuff like that. Mark Henry told this story about Owen Hart one time called Mark Henry's mom pretending to be the IRS, and that Mark Henry said that was the first time he ever heard his mom cuss because she was so pissed. There was another time where he dropped off chickens in Vince's office. It's so random, but the guy is known for being a master ribber, and these stories back that up. There was another time where he taped Vince's briefcase to the ceiling fan. Again, just dumb stuff, but it is really funny. I'm sure it's not funny for the person being targeted, but it really is funny in retrospect, though. They also talk about Chyna going into the Hall of Fame and how it's long overdue. So this was obviously recorded over WrestleMania weekend. That's nuts. This must have been recorded in Brooklyn over Mania weekend, 8 months ago. It's December 24th as I talk right now, so that's crazy. But they all praised Chyna and how, she was really there for all of them. She was always there for the Nation of Domination and not just them, but everyone in the company at that point, but specifically them. They also praised Mark Henry, and D'Lo did Mark Henry's storyline with Chyna back in the day, which, again, if they did it today, it might be stupid, but back then it was wildly entertaining. Chyna played her role remarkably well. It helped out Mark Henry a lot. D'Lo was involved at one point. It was a really fun story. And Mark Henry brings up as we wind down here that people would come up to him saying that I only used to watch wrestling for the Nation of Domination, which is really cool. And it's not just black people or just white people. It's a lot of different people who said that we love the Nation of Domination. And none of them knew at the time that they'd be trailblazers. I mean, how could they? You don't really know in the moment, like, oh, what I'm doing is historic, or what I'm doing is going to be legendary, or what I'm doing is going to be remembered forever. Obviously, it's something you kind of realize in retrospect, like, wow, that was a really important thing that we did, and they all realize that now. And they're all still friends. It's one of the few stables where they all still talk to this day, and now it's one of the few stables where it elevated everyone. A lot of those guys went on to win multiple championships in WWE. D'Lo Brown went on to become a European champion, Intercontinental champion, was a solid mid-carder for a few years there in WWE. Obviously, The Godfather became The Godfather, also won the Intercontinental Championship and had some longevity in the company for a while after that. Ron Simmons never really did much on his own after the Nation of Domination, but he did go on to have success alongside JBL, and APA had, a number of tag team title reigns to his credit for that. The Rock became the fucking Rock, headlining Hollywood and shit like that. Mark Henry went on to become, the Hall of Pain. He's obviously lasted the longest out of everyone, and he retired a few years ago when he went into the Hall of Fame. But he went on to become World Heavyweight Champion, ECW Champion, had a lot of great reigns and a lot of great runs, especially in the latter half of his career, which is kind of crazy in retrospect. But yeah, D'Lo also talks a lot about Ron Simmons. They spend their time praising Ron, saying that Ron's one of the few people that D'Lo calls whenever he has to make a life-changing, important decision. And D'Lo said that he was there. He got to tell Ron that he was there when Ron won the World Championship in WCW years earlier, which is really cool. And then to close out the episode, Mark Henry gets really emotional, sharing a story about an experience that he had with Ron around the time, I believe, when he first met him. When Ron was telling Mark about like how black wrestlers used to be treated in the business and how that's changed, and the respect that Mark had for Ron and their camaraderie a little bit. And Mark, there was like a solid 15-second silent pause here in the episode, and I thought my audio stopped working, but it's just Mark Henry. He doesn't say anything. Godfather and D'Lo Brown, to their credit, say nothing. They just kind of let Mark Henry have his moment. He gets really choked up and starts crying while talking about Ron. You would think the guy's dead, but it's really just an emotional story, talking about how far African-American performers in wrestling have come since that point, how they used to be treated and how it is now and stuff like that, and then the change that's occurred in that time, which is really cool. And they say power to the nation to close this thing out, and I thought that was a really powerful note to end on. Not the line itself, which that was cool, but the emotional breakdown from Mark Henry. I'm not saying that anyone who cries during the show is an instant winner, but it was a real moment. It was a genuine moment with Mark Henry, and I thought that was really cool. But I thought this episode overall was a lot of fun. So if you saw this and you were thinking to yourself, oh, this isn't really for me. We've seen this before with Nation and Domination on the show. It's not newsworthy, blah, blah, blah. Definitely make time to check it out. This was great stuff. I don't care that we've already seen a Nation of Domination episode before. This was awesome. Especially great to see D'Lo Brown again. I don't think we've seen him on a WWE show since he left the company 10 years ago. To be honest with you, I can't remember a single time they brought him in for anything. Maybe like one of those old network specials, like the Countdown shit and whatever. Even then, I don't remember them ever using D'Lo, because back when they were doing those shows, he was in TNA. and he's back with Impact now, and I feel like this was recorded before he went back to Impact. But either way, I thought this was great. This, I thought, was really, really good stuff here. A lot of emotional moments. Learned a lot that I didn't know before, and maybe you already knew a lot of this stuff. I know I didn't. I thought it was great. So again, if you saw the episode in the network, skimming through and saw this available, and you're thinking to yourself, oh, they've already done a Nation of Domination episode, or oh, it's not really that important of an episode, or oh, it's Christmas Eve, I have other, shit to do, which may very well be true. Definitely make time to check out this show, whether it be today, tomorrow, on Christmas itself. It'd be nice, it's a pleasant Christmas surprise. I thought this was a really good episode. So again, either check it out today, tomorrow, later this week, whatever. But I thought it was well worth the time and just really, really good stuff. But thank you guys, as always, for checking out WWE Network and Chill. Very much appreciate the support this year. Not slowing down the content whatsoever, despite the fact it's the holiday season. So today we have this review going up, and then tomorrow I'm about to record #AskGSM, #AskGSM for Wednesday, for Christmas morning. So I'm hoping to get it recorded now, get it uploaded and all that other shit before Christmas morning tomorrow, so I can just hit that publish button and we can be off to the races and we can all just go enjoy our Christmas morning. Maybe you spend your Christmas morning listening to me fucking answer your wrestling questions while opening gifts. Who knows? But either way, guys, appreciate the support. Be sure to like this video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. I'm not sure if there's any more new network stuff coming up. We might be hitting a bit of a dry spell for a little while. Again, there's a new hashtag going up tomorrow, Wrestle Rant Radio on Thursday, the excerpts. But I'm not sure if I'll be posting much over the weekend. So I know I say daily content, but I feel like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, unless I post something random like a SmackDown review or whatever, an audio review of SmackDown coming up on Friday. Other than that, I don't really have much else planned because all the shows are taking a break. Total Divas ended. Ms. and Mrs. doesn't come back for another month. I don't believe there's any new network content coming up. Just spend the weekend catching up on the shit that you missed, like this show and the 365 on Seth Rollins. Both were excellent. So until next time, guys, have a very Merry Christmas. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the reindeer road.